Alright, so we got our ride height set, our tow, our camber, and our radio system set up to get the proper steering. Now we're going to set the slipper. It's one of the last things we do before we hit the track. Here we have a 17.5 motor, and it is definitely harder to set the slipper for a 17.5 or a spec motor than it is for a modified, but we intentionally put a 17.5 in to show you exactly how to do that today. We've had a lot of questions about that over the years. So first thing I'm going to do is I took the slipper nut on this 22 5.0 DC roller and I went ahead and backed it off until the nut is flush with the end of the lay shaft. It should be a fairly loose slipper setting, and whenever you're setting the slipper, it's always best to start on the loose end and work towards the right setting. Having your slipper set too tight is definitely not ideal. The slipper setting is really important because what it does is it allows the RPM of the motor and the RPM of the tires to match themselves when they're in situations where they wouldn't normally match. So it gives some slip between them and allows those RPMs to come together. For example, if you're landing a jump and you're full throttle and your tires are at 20,000 RPM, but you land at a speed of 5,000 RPMs, all of a sudden your tires are trying to decelerate, but your motor is still putting that power out. And you need basically the slipper to slip to bring those two RPMs back together. If you run a slipper that's too tight, it's going to bog the motor down, it's going to create excessive heat, and it's going to kill power. If you run a slipper that's too loose, then you're not going to get all the power from the motor to the tires. You're going to lose some of that power within the slipper assembly itself, just slipping and not creating the proper amount of drive. Alright, I have my radio here. I'm going to go ahead and power that on. I have my 7mm nut driver here for the slipper nut. I'm going to go ahead and plug my battery in, and my car is powered up. I'm going to use my left hand, my throttle hand here, holding the radio and the trigger. I'm going to put the butt of my wrist here on the left rear tire. Same on the right rear, holding the driver, and I'm going to stab the throttle. You don't want to pull it, you want to stab it. Okay, you can hear the motor spinning through the slipper. It raised the front of the car, but it didn't lift it off the ground or anything. The motor was spinning pretty fast, and how you can really tell that the slipper's set right is basically by the sound, by listening to how much drag there is against the motor. That setting right there is fairly loose, so I'm going to go ahead and give it a full turn tighter, and that should get me a lot closer to the ballpark. Again, holding the tires down. So you hear that the tires coming up off the ground, the slipper slipping, but the motor is bogged down quite a bit. That's actually a really good setting for 17.5. I'm going to go ahead and start with it there. But just to show you guys what a slipper that's too tight would sound like, I'm just going to tighten this guy down another full turn. And again, if you stab the throttle, this is a 17.5 motor. It might pop the tires up, but if it's not slipping, it could just almost do a little bit of a cog. So you saw there, it cogged, pulled the tires up because it has a lot of power, but it did cog through the motor. The slipper didn't slip at all. You didn't hear that kind of whining noise. So that's definitely too tight. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen it back up a turn. I'm actually going to go a turn and a quarter. We'll check this setting again. Slipping a little bit too much, so we'll tighten it back up that quarter turn. That's just about right. One thing that you want to do is when you're setting the slipper, you want to give your motor and your speed control a little bit of time to cool with the 17.5. You don't want to just keep stabbing it over and over again, because that resistance that we're putting through the system does create heat. But that's the perfect setting for a 17.5 two-wheel drive buggy, and we're going to go out on the track and have some fun.